it's my great privilege to introduce Congressman, Chairman, Coach, Manager Doyle. Mike is a friend to INCOMPAS. He's a champion for competition. As I was thinking about the introduction, you know, we've had during the pandemic the Tiger King. My university is Ole Miss, and Lane Kiffin has deemed himself the portal transfer king. But Mike is just the competition king. And he's been that way, whether it's on the baseball field or in Congress promoting competition in broadband and in technology and the internet. And so we're just thankful that he's been our champion, our friend, our advocate. You know, I have a son with Asperger's who's on the autism spectrum, and Mike has been a great friend, leading the way for autism research and just been, I mean, you name it. If there's a critical area in Congress, Mike is there doing the right thing in the right way. I am thankful that he is my friend and has been since I served in Congress, and someone that our member companies, whether they're trying to deploy networks in Pittsburgh, trying to add or be a part of the tech hub that Pittsburgh has become, a leader in autonomous vehicles or in climate change or in energy and environment and in broadband. We really just have a good man and a good leader. And so with that, to the competition king, to my friend, Mike Doyle.
Well, Chip, can I just take you everywhere to do introductions? You know, when Chip played baseball, he was third baseman, and back when Chip played, they were beating us every year. They had Steve Largent pitching, and they had a really good team. So we were glad to see him leave Congress. And the worm turned a little bit with Cedric Richmond, but then Biden stole him to the West Wing, and I'll never forgive the president for that. But Chip, thanks. It's been a great association. It's been a pleasure serving with you and working with you here. And as many of you know, I'm retiring at the end of the year after 28 years in Congress. I thought the redistricting was a good time to pass the torch to the next generation. And I promised my wife I wouldn't be in Congress in my 70s or 80s, so I'm keeping my pledge. I'll be 69 when I leave. So anyways, it's good to be here. And I appreciate those kind words. You know, it's been great working with INCOMPAS and all of the member companies over the years. And, you know, when you think about INCOMPAS, your organization embodies the concept competition. I mean, it's right there in your name, and it's been a guiding principle of mine throughout my service in Congress. So, you know, consumers, businesses, the economy, they're all better served with robust competitive markets. It's a cherished American value, competition is. But, you know, it takes dedication to continually commit ourselves to it. So I want to salute you all for your dedication to this ideal. It's important not only that you, our business community, continue to promote competition, but that Congress also continues to work to ensure that we have competitive marketplaces. So when we passed the '96 Telecom Act, we made sure competition was one of the core values, and it's important as just as relevant today. For instance, take any consumer who's experienced a new broadband provider serving their community. They're likely going to see their service improve, or their prices go down, or maybe both. And as we try to connect all Americans, it's competition that will help drive service providers towards those consumers with products and prices that meet their needs and their budgets. Now, as a representative for the people of Pittsburgh and chairman of Technology Subcommittee, I've tried to promote policies that increase competition, whether that's determining how spectrum bands are allocated or how television viewers get access to content. And as you all know, I have long advocated in Congress for net neutrality explicitly because it's all about competition and ensuring that internet service providers don't abuse their market power or gatekeeper status to unfairly stifle competitors or disadvantage their own customers. Americans should never have to suffer that, and that's why we should continue to pursue a national pro-consumer, pro-competition net neutrality framework. The FCC also has a responsibility to promote competition. Now that Chair Rosenworcel, a longtime champion of consumers in competition, has been confirmed, I have no doubt that it will. The commission has a lot on its plate right now, but I think with Jessica at the helm, I have faith that she will endeavor to instill competition in all that she does. You know, when I spoke to you last, a year and a half ago, I guess, Chip, we were in the midst, though in hindsight, really only the beginning of the pandemic. But even by that time, it had laid bare the importance of broadband. The intervening time has only made the need for robust broadband connectivity more acute. And I'm glad that over the stretch, we've successfully enacted many of the policies we knew that were necessary then. Our efforts to close the digital divide since the pandemic have been historic. Congress has created the Emergency Connectivity Fund, money that schools and libraries can use to connect the students. We created the Emergency Broadband Benefit to help families struggling to afford internet service. We created the Coronavirus Capital Projects Fund to help state and local governments provide broadband to their constituents. The Tribal Connectivity Plan made huge investments in the Department of Agriculture's Reconnect program. And through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, we created the Affordability Connectivity Fund and NTIA's Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. That's roughly $80 billion targeted directly at connecting Americans. And while not specific to broadband, there's also the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, some $375 billion that states can tap into to bring connectivity to underserved communities. It's this generational funding that's putting us on a path to 100% connectivity. These resources far exceed any congressionally directed funding in my 28 years in Congress. I mean, it's an accomplishment that many of us are going to look back on fondly. And it's kind of regrettable that it took a pandemic to really focus our efforts here. So make no mistake, though, our work is far from complete. Congress is going to need to provide direction, assistance, and oversight as these programs are implemented. We're going to have to be diligent to ensure that the money appropriated is used efficiently and that the goals of the laws we passed are achieved. Going forward, Congress and the FCC will have to continue their efforts to make sure all Americans can afford broadband and that it is truly available everywhere. That will be a long-lasting and ongoing effort, and new challenges will certainly arise. So, not only in the coming months will Congress need to work with the administration, but also in the coming years. I have confidence that Chair Rosenworcel and Chairman Pallone and other congressional leaders will continue to work to ensure that broadband is accessible and affordable to all Americans. Of course, we must continue the broader effort to create an environment for our networks to flourish. I've been advancing the Spectrum Innovation Act to encourage the federal government to maximize the amount of mid-band spectrum available for consumer use. This would build on the work done in the infrastructure package to not only get more spectrum available, but also allow for a broader range of types of uses. I strongly believe policies that allow more users and uses of our spectrum will lead to better services for consumers and faster speeds and will move us towards ubiquitous connectivity. The Spectrum Innovation Act would also restore the longstanding principle that no single spectrum stakeholder should be the final arbiter of reallocation decisions. Giving an incumbent user veto power over this process will almost certainly not lead to better outcomes for consumers or our country. And this brings me to my next point. It is imperative that we reallocate spectrum through the long-standing policy processes that have proven successful in the past. And I recognize that these allocation decisions will only become more difficult as consumer demand increases and our airwaves become more crowded. But abandoning the processes that have worked well does a disservice both to incumbent users and consumers. You know, it would be an understatement to say that the rollout of wireless broadband in the C-band has been less than smooth. And because of this difficulty, The cause of this difficulty was the failure of the federal government to adhere to the processes already in place to ensure we got the policies correct. It makes sense that we use this stumble as an opportunity to learn lessons to improve the allocation processes to avoid such costly fights in the future. And I think that starts with re-emphasizing the time-tested role of the NTIA as manager of federal spectrum. Federal agencies need to trust and need to be able to trust NTIA as their voice within the federal government. And as much as consumer demand is skyrocketing, federal use is also increasing, and their operations need to be protected. So with that in mind, it's worth revisiting how the agencies work with NTIA to advance their missions and achieve our other policy goals. Further, we need to take steps to set expectations for spectrum users, including establishing a national spectrum strategy. Deploying and operating networks is not something that's achieved with the flip of a switch. So giving businesses and agencies a framework in which to plan is vital. And as the GAO recently pointed out, we should evaluate whether NTIA has the workforce it needs to fulfill its mission. Gathering and analyzing the technical data is a difficult but critically important task, and NTIA should have the resources it needs. Ultimately, however, at the end of the decision-making process, after collaboration and input from all stakeholders, the federal government needs to move forward as one on the allocation decisions that are made. So in the coming weeks, I look forward to working with my colleagues on the Energy and Commerce Committee to strengthen these policies. A last point on spectrum that I understand is at the top of a lot of your minds is the importance of the 12 gigahertz band, not only to encompass to all its member companies. And I agree that we must ensure that we're optimizing all spectrum bands to both meet the needs of our future 5G deployments and America's connectivity needs today to help us close the digital divide. I want you all to know that I'm following the proceeding at the commission closely. I have confidence, though, that the commission will reach the right decision given the technical expertise of FCC staff. But to zoom out a bit, it's not just about 5G or the networks we funded through the infrastructure bill, as important as they are. For Congress and other policymakers to be best positioned to address future issues, we need to consider the next generation, 6G wireless technology, and we need to do it now. The technological developments over the past 30 years have not flowed to all Americans equally. And as we know, this next generation network is coming. I'm moving legislation to compel the federal government to consider these policy issues before the network is deployed. The Future Networks Act would require the FCC to create a 6G task force to report on possible uses, strengths, and limitations of 6G, including any supply chain, cybersecurity, or other limitations that will need to be addressed as the wireless technology evolves. The task force would be comprised of a wide range of stakeholders, including members of Congress, industry, public interest groups, and representatives from every level of government, including tribes, and would lay the groundwork for the policy considerations that are certainly going to arise. This bill has been incorporated into the American Competes Act that just passed the House as a counterpart to the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act. I'm hopeful that Congress can reconcile these two bills quickly, as the underlying policies are so important to America's competitive standing on the global stage. So whether it's at the consumer level or internationally, we find ourselves again focused on competition. And Congress has much work to do this year and undoubtedly in the coming years. I'm proud to have played a part during my time in Congress to help create an environment where companies like yours can compete and succeed for the benefit of the people that I represent in Pittsburgh and for consumers nationwide and our country as a whole. I want to thank you all for the time we've been able to work together. I look forward to seeing Congress tackle these tough issues in the future. And Chip, I look forward to seeing you on occasion as I make my way down to Washington after I move on to different things. But thank you for the invitation and for being here today.